Hi, this is Karen Anderson with Aortic Hope, having a night of gremlins here on this live event. So bear with us. We had a little bit of a kind of a technical difficulty. So I'm going to start from scratch. Pretend we reround there. Okay. So this is a really special night for a live event. Typically, we go live for our weekend reviews. We go live when I interview physicians. We also have survivors that go live and tell their story so they can interact with you and take your questions. That's why I asked you to click that like button and click subscribe and click the little bell so that you're notified so you don't miss events like this. But this is a really special one. We do it at least once a year, if not twice a year. As we know in this community, it's ever changing. There's always new people joining. One might say that's a bad thing. I think it's kind of a good thing because we can't stop our genes. They are what they are. So if we have more people joining, that means more of you are surviving and more people are thinking aorta. See what I did there? I slipped in another name of another organization. But tonight we have Barbara Mountain from Doherty, Cella, Keane and Associates, and she's going to go over with us the way we can successfully navigate the Social Security disability process. And believe me, I might have done this like 8 years ago. It is a daunting task. And I hate nothing more than when I get something in the mail that says it's coming from Social Security. I don't like anything government. I don't like SSA, IRS. I don't like anything like local police. I don't like anything. DMV, all those letters make me upset. So let's get started by having you explain to everybody who you are. And then we're going to just talk a little bit about this process and start taking some questions from everybody. Go ahead.
All right. Thanks, Karen. Thanks for having
Sure.
me. Welcome, everyone. My name is Barbara Mountain, and I'm the National Director of the law firm Doherty, Cella, and Keane. And what we do is we help people get on Social Security, get on Social Security disability. So we represent claimants and help them through that process. And unfortunately, Social Security is not an easy process. It's pretty darn daunting. They don't make it super user-friendly. Social Security, unfortunately, has not gotten easier to get on Social Security. COVID has not been good to the Social Security Administration. It's taking longer to get anything done. It's a lot more errors being made, and the customer service about Social Security has gone massively downhill. So we've always been doing this, and we've always been needed, but I would say we've never been needed more than right now because of the obstacles Social Security is throwing into the process. So Social Security, I'll give you a little bit of my background, just so you know who I am. I started my career right out of college working for the Social Security Administration, and I worked for Social Security for 7 years. I was a social insurance specialist, which means I had expertise in Social Security law and supplemental security in law. I've then kind of kept Social Security as the theme of my life. Fortunately for me, I'm passionate about it. I think it's a great program. Yes, they have their struggles administering it, but it's a really good quality program that helps a lot of people. And I'm fortunate enough that I'm in a position where my job is to help people. I worked for an insurance industry, Liberty Mutual, for years, where we help people obtain Social Security benefits. And then I've been with Doherty, Cella, Keane now for 13 years, where we're working with individuals and helping them go through the process. So I feel really good about the work that we do, and I know that it's absolutely necessary. So what is Social Security disability? Social Security disability is really an insurance program that you pay for as a worker. So when you're working, you're paying FICA taxes. Those FICA taxes are your premiums to receive Social Security benefits. Social Security is more than just retirement. Yes, you're paying into a retirement benefit, but you're also getting health insurance, disability insurance, and life insurance. So when you're working, you've got this coverage. And if you are unfortunately in a situation where you get a disability and you're unable to work, you could potentially file for Social Security disability. Now, the definition of disability for Social Security is a condition that prevents you from doing any sort of work that's expected to last for at least 12 months or result in death. So the idea is whatever your condition is, it's really preventing you from doing any job out there, and it's going to last for at least 12 months. You don't have to wait 12 months to file. You could file the day you became disabled. As long as the medical would support you that you're not expected to improve within 12 months, we could get your case awarded. Now, Social Security is a long process, it can be a long process. It shouldn't be, but it is, unfortunately. And that's because not everybody's approved at the initial level. You file, there's an initial level. If you're denied, you can file an appeal, and that's called a reconsideration. If you're denied, you can file an appeal, and then you go to a hearing where you go before a judge the first time you're actually able to speak your case, and that's where it's really important to have a representative. And if you're denied at that level, you can go to appeals counsel, where you're basically saying, Social Security, you didn't interpret your law correctly, or there was a mistake made. And this appeals counsel will look at it and say, yeah, there was a mistake made. Let's remand that back to a hearing. If you're denied the appeals council, there's even another level you can go where you leave Social Security jurisdiction and you go to federal district court. You basically sue the government that you're not interpreting your laws correctly. Now, not every case will go there, but there are cases where we see there's an absolute mistake been made and this person was not given a fair shot and we need to go to federal district court. Now, those again are far few and in between that we're going to do, and you hope you don't have to get there, because by the time you're at federal district court, you could be 6-7 years into this case process. So you want to get the cases awarded up front. So people can file on their own. You can file online. I don't recommend it. And the reason I don't recommend it is because it's really not easy. It's not intuitive. When they ask you a question, you don't necessarily know what they mean. A question as basic as, what is my date of onset? For some people, that's easy. Oh, yep, it was one thing happened and that's the date. Other people, something happened, they were out for a little while, they went back to work, didn't work out, they went out, goes back and forth. What date are they looking for? And there's a lot of other questions. They may ask you about, can you work? And a person might write, well, I can, but I can only do light work. And they think light work just means just a little something. And they don't understand there's a definition behind light work. And you might not have meant that. So it's really important that when you're completing all the forms, everything's completed accurately and correctly in order to get you the earliest onset date, which will get you the earliest point of getting your benefits, and that you answer all the questions knowing what Social Security is looking for. And Social Security is looking to see how your medical condition equates with your ability to work. Because remember, Social Security is a workers program, and it's designed to pay benefits to individuals that are no longer working, either because of disability or because of retirement. So that's kind of a long-winded overview. And I'm going to now turn it back to Karen to see if she has specific questions for me, or if anyone else has specific questions that they want to write in.
Yeah, let's go through it, because there's a lot that's involved in this process. So for a lot of people, we're going to assume that they were working, and let's go with dissection, because that's the easiest one to answer here. So somebody has an aortic dissection, boom, it's happened, they're working. And typically, and tell me if I'm wrong, if you qualify and if your employer offers, they're going to put you on short-term disability first. Let's get you 12 weeks, because that's what an employer may allow you to have if you qualify for FMLA. You're going to have your short-term disability that goes on for a period of time. And if you still can't come back to work, now they're going to move you into long-term disability. And with long-term disability, you may be beyond that 12 weeks. So now you may not have a position anymore. That's all employer dependent. And typically when people have you into long-term disability, again, if your employer offers this, because these are benefits, they're going to usually immediately assign you to a law firm. And this doesn't always happen. In my case, that's how I found you guys. I was on short-term disability. I couldn't get it together to come back in, I think it was 6 months. And then I was moved into long-term disability. So before that, I utilized all my personal time off, everything like that, was receiving 60% of my salary. Long-term received the same, and was immediately introduced to you to begin this process. So I was working on the disability process simultaneous to being on long-term disability, because at this point we already knew I had no foreseeable date where I was going to come back to work. But aortic dissection is not necessarily you are automatically granted, because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's termed as a condition or an event that happens that you could recover from. Is this correct?
Yes. Yeah. It really depends on the specifics of, everybody's case being unique and what we have to prove. But really, it depends on what that medical shows and what your likelihood is of getting approved. I mean, serious cases should get awarded at the initial level. And then some people, are showing that they, potentially have a chance to improve in the future. And then those cases, might take a little bit more work. So it really depends on the specifics of it. But every type of case, part of, in addition to our gathering the medical and preparing the case to present it to show Social Security and meet the definition of disability, is also just the administrative burden of getting everything submitted to Social Security, making sure they have it, making sure it gets to what's called Disability Determination Services. They're the people who make the medical decision. Right now, Social Security is incredibly understaffed and underfunded. They don't have enough people to do the work. And because of that, things are sitting and delaying for just months and months. I know, Karen, you asked me if things had changed since you filed 8 years ago, and they've changed dramatically. There used to always be a backlog at the hearing level where you get a pretty quick initial decision. You get a pretty quick reconsideration decision, and then you had to wait for potentially a year or 2 years to get a hearing. It's completely changed. You now can get hearings quite quickly, but you have a delay at the front end. Initial decisions are on averaging over 7 months. And the same thing for the reconsideration. So everybody who files now is stuck in this backlog. And so part of what we do is making sure that we're submitting everything complete, ready to go, and then following up religiously with Social Security to make sure that claim gets to the Disability Determination Service and starts to get worked, so you don't just get stuck behind that pile. So as sad as it is to say, it doesn't even just come down to the medical. It comes down to a lot of advocacy to get that case through the Social Security process. And, you know, I don't want to feel like I'm damning Social Security employees, because I actually totally recognize what's happened with them is they just don't have enough people to do the work. And so it's just, they're doing what they can. It's not a great place to work. They've had a tremendous amount of attrition. And so they're not happy campers, and they're doing the best they can, but you need somebody to advocate for you to get that case to Social Security, to get the medical decision, to get you your benefits that you're entitled to.
So what I want them to understand is, just because you have an aortic dissection, which may have completely upended your life, doesn't mean that you're going to get an immediate decision. And just because you have, and we say only an aneurysm, doesn't mean you're going to get an automatic favorable decision, because some people with an aneurysm that were holding jobs that required them to lift over 100 pounds or even 50, and now their physician saying, absolutely, you can't. If that employer is not willing to or cannot offer a different form of employment, they may lose their job, and they may find that in their field of career. And so therefore, you might find yourself in a position to apply to disability. And one of the things that you're correct about is, it's not for us to think about that. If we are hearing from our physician that it is agreed upon that working is not going to happen, let's say it's not going to happen for the next year or two. Maybe the goal is, let's see where you are when we get through your first year, and we get through cardiac rehab if you need it. Let's reevaluate as physician and patient in 2 years. But for right now, working is probably off the table. Someone can still apply for disability.
And I would actually encourage you to file. I would encourage to file earlier than ever. Even when you're not even sure, even when you're very hopeful that you're going to go back within 12 months, which should be your goal. I mean, you want to go back to work. That's what you want to do. If you're able to, great. But I would encourage you to even file before you know for sure, because of how long Social Security is taking. So we've kind of changed the philosophy when we look at cases that we used to say, well, you know what, let's wait and see what happens, because your claim's likely to get denied because it's not going to, we don't know at this point, the medical's not saying it's going to last beyond 12 months. We are now saying file, because they're not going to make a decision. We're going to have the information by the time that happens. So let's get you in the pipeline.
So then I have a question about timing, because this is blowing my mind. So let's say you just need a year or two. You really need that time to become acclimated to your medications, to your new body, to everything, build up your stamina, let a fasciotomy heal, whatever your situation is. So you can't apply to unemployment, because you shouldn't be looking for a job. Now, so you don't have a job. You can't apply to unemployment to look for one. But you are saying definitely do the unemployment, even if the goal is in 2 years to try to see if you're physically able to obtain a job, because we really don't know. And that's in the future. But for right now, you are unable to work. You are classified as disabled from the ability to work. You are not able to work. Fill out the paperwork. 2 years, you're able to work. Do you get retroed for the time that you were off?
Absolutely. So a lot
you
of
are
people
still fighting to retain that. Even if you go back to work, what you're fighting for is that insurance policy that you mentioned, that from the day I met you, Barbara, the day that you said, this is your insurance policy you're paying into, was the moment the stigma left my mind. And that's something we're going to talk about in a minute too. You're saying, even though you end up going back to work, you should still apply for the retro of the time that you were disabled and could not work.
Absolutely. As long as you end up being out for at least 12 months, you are now eligible for what's called a closed period decision. So say you file and you go back to work 24 months later, you would be eligible for those prior benefits for that period of time in the past. Now, say you get awarded and then you go back to work a few months later. Well, now you get a whole new benefit, because you can return to work. Now, it's a common misconception that Social Security is a permanent disability program. Yes, it's for people who can't work and do anything for at least 12 months, but the goal is you get better and you go back to work. And so Social Security has some great work incentives designed to encourage people to go back to work. So say you're the individual who filed, and at 2 years, you get awarded, and then you go back to work 3 months later. Well, as long as you go back to work after when you get awarded, you're now entitled to these great work incentives. And you can go back to work for 9 months, and no matter how much you earn, you get your full Social Security check. It's called your trial work period. So again, no limit. You might get a job and you're making $20,000 a month. You'd still get your income. You'd still get your full Social Security check. And you get to do that for 9 months while you're trying it out. Will you be successful? And then at the end of that 9th month, you then enter a 3-year period of time where any month you're earning over a term called substantial gainful activity, and it has a dollar amount associated with it, changes annually. Substantial gainful activity in 2024 is $1,550. So during these next 3 years, if you earn more than $1,550 in a month, you're not due your check. Any month you earn under $1,550, you are. So for 3 years, you may be in pay, in work suspense, in pay, in work suspense, really giving you an opportunity to test out your ability to work, to know you're going to be successful before you're at risk of being terminated by Social Security. So it really builds in a lot of protections for you. So again, you can get on and you can go back to work. It's not a problem. And actually, you gain a lot. You can get those 9 months of checks while testing it out before you know you'll be successful and can feel safe and confident in continuing on in that job.
And that is such a huge misconception. And believe me, even myself, I have sat here and I've thought, gosh, if I want, I have no time. Aortic Cope keeps me very busy, as does Think Aorta. And as we were talking before I even came on, clearly even going to a conference, so I can hit a wall at 3 o'clock and I am in physical agony because I'm not sleeping. But separate from that, if that wasn't the case, I would be thinking, what kind of job could I take if I can make up to $1,500 a month and still retain my benefits, and then try that, for 3 years? I mean, at the end of 3 years, you're saying it's going to be whichever is the highest, right? So if you're making $1,000 a month and at the end of 3 years you can work, they're just going to keep giving you your disability check and you get the 1,000.
Absolutely. Right. And the only time you'd be terminated, right? You're not terminated until the first month after the 3-year period of time. Right. So you have the 9-month trial work period, the 3 years. Yep. Then it's the first month you earn over SGA, which is the 1,550. Right. So if you're under that, you can just keep getting Social Security and keep earning your benefits. And now it could trigger a medical review. Social Security will do continuing medical reviews. And then they would look at your medical and see if anything's improved. And you do have to show improvement. I mean, everything stayed the same. You're not going to get off benefits. So I know people get very nervous when they see they're being reviewed. The vast majority of medical reviews, people stay on claim. So it's not something, nobody wants to be reviewed. I know it's a very scary thing, but you can get help. Like, we can help people do continuing disability reviews. We do it all the time when they're concerned and nervous about it. But the vast majority of people, if the condition is not improved, are not going to be terminated medically by Social Security.
And you say that because when I got a review, I guess it was 2 years ago, I hadn't seen one of those in a while. And I made a quick phone call to Chris, and here it is. And I talk about this all the time to people that will listen. And I was freaking out. And he's like, nothing's improved, Karen. Like, just don't worry about it. Just sign the form and let them go gather the documents. Like, everything's going to be fine. And, and I'm sitting here thinking, how many times have I been to the ER this year? And he's like, that's enough. You already said enough. That's in itself, I've never hit a year where I haven't had to go to make sure something isn't okay. So over time, it was 9 years for me. My aortiversary was 9 years, like the other day, yesterday. You start to live with it and you realize it's not as nerve-wracking as it is in the beginning, but I completely appreciate people just being nervous about this situation, about their finances, about a job, about how long this is going to take. So let's talk about that time frame. And first of all, is the time frame the same across the country? I know it's not.
No, every state is a little bit different. It's not great anywhere. I'm going to tell you that. Nobody's good. The South, particularly bad. Those southern states have had the largest number of attrition and loss of employees. So they were pretty much in the dire straits. They've never been the best, honestly, in terms of time frame, but they're even worse now. But everywhere is slow. The South is where I would point out is particularly slow.
So you're going to fill this out. It can be the moment that this happens or whenever you realize, okay, this has happened. So you don't have to wait a year to do it. You just do it. I know now I'm not going back to work. Begin the process. Just do it. Okay. So then how long does it take typically on average before you get your first term,
decision?
What am I saying? Yeah. Your first decision of no.
So right now, the initial application is taking on average 7 months, which is so high.
Okay.
It used to be on average 108 days, and we are now at 225 days for that initial level decision. Social Security says on average 7 months. We are seeing some initial decisions that are taking over a year. I'm seeing very few that are coming in 3 months. So I would say it's, pretty accurate to estimate 7 months. In terms of when you'd first be due a check, just so you know, so you have a date of onset. That is the date when you no longer could work.
Right.
Social Security, we're going to prove that you were disabled as of that date. And if Social Security agrees with us, you have a waiting period. Everyone has to wait 5 full calendar months before they're due their first check. So if you were found to be disabled on March 12th, your waiting period would be April, May, June, July, and August. September is your first month of entitlement. September is the first month you can be due a check, and your check for September is paid in October. Social Security pays in arrears. So whenever you get a check in a month, it's for the month before. They do that because you have to live every day of the month to be due the check, and it helps them prevent overpayments.
So
but there's a little delay there.
You're only getting 1 month, or are you getting all the way back to your date of disability?
Oh, no. Oh, you'd only get from September, from the date of entitlement. So you always have that waiting period when you're not doing anything. So it's the date of onset.
Always 5 months.
5 full calendar months. Then, so that September, so say it was September of 2022, and you're not awarded until December of 2023. You will be paid retro benefits back to September of 2022. Even though your onset is March, the first date of entitlement is September, and from whatever point they award you, you get paid back to that entitlement date. So most likely you will have some retroactive benefits.
So let's do this. I'm writing this time frame down so we can help everybody. Okay. So January 2022, January 15th, 22, I become disabled. Okay. So I file immediately because I already know my doctors. We all know this is what's happened. So I file. Now I get denied. Well, first of all, you're saying it's taking on 7 months to get an answer. So I'm not even hearing anything till July of 22. Let's say on a good day, on a good year, a good month.
Let's say that.
I'm denied. I'm going to turn right around, and you guys are going to write it. You're going to apply
file
again.
An appeal. Yes.
You're going to file an appeal.
We're going to file an appeal for a reconsideration, which is a Social Security form. We have 30 days to file an appeal, 30 days from the date of your denial notice, and your denial notice will tell you that, and it's 30 days from the date of the denial notice. We file an appeal. If you have any new medical that we want to add to it, we submit that as well. And now we're waiting, and we're going to wait probably another 7 months on average. Yes. So this is dramatically longer than it's been pre-COVID, really. I'd say things started to get longer around 2020. They've gotten, consistently worse. Unfortunately, they're continuing to take longer. But yeah, we're talking 7 months. So now we're in March of 23. Now we're in March, and now we've been denied the reconsideration. Right.
Now we've been denied. You've done it by April of 15 of 2023. And how long does it take before you're granted a hearing?
Now that's the good news, is that hearings don't take as long anymore. We are seeing some hearing. I mean, it's kind of across the board. I can tell you that in general, you're going to get a hearing date, usually 7 to 9 months. Sometimes it's longer, but we've also seen some where it's been 3 months later. I mean, things that I never, ever thought I would see. And I know you all, fortunately, have never had to deal in the Social Security disability world. I've been in it forever. Forever. The problem was the hearing backlog, with people waiting for a hearing, and it would take sometimes 1 year to 2 years to get a hearing date. So this is amazing how fast we get a hearing. But the not amazing part is the hearing only affected the people that had to go to a hearing. The delay on the front end affects everybody. So we solved one problem, and we kind of created a bigger, worse problem.
So now let's say it takes 5 months. We have our hearing the 23rd, and we're approved. And we're going to talk about some of the things that happens in these hearings and things that people are looking for on applications in a minute. We have our hearing in September 23. We get approved. So we wait how long now before the decision the ink dries, and now we're awarded? Because again, we're not going to be awarded until 5 months from the date of onset, which is June of 22. Our back retro pay will be June, but when in 24 would we expect to actually see that?
Okay, so once you have a hearing, usually is about 60 days after the date of your hearing to get the decision back. And then once it goes processed into pay, you should get a check within 30 days. So once you get that award, it's pretty quickly. And then you would be paid back to your earliest entitlement date. So if you were disabled in January, your waiting period is February, March, April, May, and June. July is your date of entitlement. So you'll be paid back to July.
Okay. So in December of 23, you would have been actually retroed to July of 22. Okay.
Yes. So you have a
Now,
very large retroactive check coming.
one of the important things we have to mention, because people forget about this, if you have children under 18, that's something I almost forgot.
Mhm.
I don't even know how it slipped my mind when I did it, was to mention, hey, I've got this child who was 18 by the time I had been approved and was
Mhm.
receiving payment, but I still got retroactive, including him because he was under the age of 18.
Right.
And I got a separate check that was
Mhm.
valued half of what my retro check was. So can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. So there are other family members that are eligible for a benefit when an individual is eligible for a Social Security benefit, retirement or disability, or disability. It doesn't have to be just disability, it's retirement too. So there are children and there are spouses. So children are eligible if they're under the age of 18 and they're unmarried. Now, benefits stop at the age of 18 unless they're still in high school. And then
Okay.
benefits can continue until they graduate or they turn 19, whichever's earlier. So potentially your child, if they're still in high school at 18, can continue to get benefits until they graduate or they turn 19. When you take the application, one of the questions is asked, do you have any children under the age of 18? Do you have
Hmm.
any children that are disabled? They ask you about spouses and marriages. And the reason they're asking all those questions is they're lead questions. They're leading Social Security to see if there's any other potential entitlement that you're eligible for. So by mentioning that child, you're protecting them on the application. So
Hmm.
even though your son or daughter was over the age of 18 when you're awarded, they can be paid for the period of time that you were eligible when they were under the age of 18, when they were
Right.
eligible. So you're
Right.
protecting them on that application. Now,
Okay.
children or spouses, whoever's eligible on your record, their benefit amount is 50% of your benefit. So if I'm getting $1,000 a month, my child can get 500. However, there's a family max. So
Hmm.
it doesn't work that if I had 10 kids, look how much money we're getting, $1,000, 500,
Right.
500, 500. It doesn't work like that.
Hmm.
Usually a person's family maximum is 150% of their award. So my
Hmm.
maximum to my whole family is 1,500. So if I have one child, 1,000 and 500. If I have two children, 1,000, 250 and 250. If I had three
Okay.
children, and so they split that 50% amongst however many
Okay.
dependents. But with children, one might come off at some point. That means the other child is going to go up to
Goes up.
500.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, I never
So
knew that. That's interesting.
yep,
Okay.
yep. So that's how it works. And also
Okay.
potentially a spouse. So I'll mention that. A spouse can be eligible for a benefit if you have children under 16 in the household and
Hmm.
that spouse is not working and earning too much. So if that spouse is working, then we're not going to bother with them. But a
Hmm.
spouse who has children under the 16 in the household is referred to as a child and care benefit. It doesn't mean more money to the household though, because remember that
Hmm.
rule. So the one
Right.
child would have gotten 500, but if we put the child and the spouse on, it's 250 and 250. Another
Okay.
spouse that could be eligible is 62 or older. So say you are 58 and you go out on disability, you have a spouse who's 62.
Hmm.
That spouse could potentially be eligible on your record if they're not entitled to their own Social Security benefit that's greater than what they would get under yours. So maybe you have a
And
spouse who never
this
worked, then they
And
could be
this is
eligible.
why people should not try to do this on their own, because you might potentially miss this. And people in this community, so if there's anybody else with any other health issues, it might happen in your world as well. With between the medications that are, zonking us out, the PTS of what has just happened, our body's trying to heal. This is not something that you're focusing on if you visually can even focus. So to work with a law firm, to have them represent you and really, walk you through these questions, explain the whole process if you have questions, or in some cases say, I've got you, I've got this. This is what I do. I'll take care of it.
Mhm.
Don't worry. Really is it can actually significantly help your recovery from this.
Mhm.
It's one less thing you have to worry about. I do have to ask before I get to the things that they're really looking for, when they ask you things like, do you nap? They don't want you to
Mhm.
say yes or no. They want to know quantifiable
Mhm.
answers. We'll talk about that. So uh, when you're working with a law firm, I think people become concerned about that there's going to be a fee. Can you explain how everybody is paid?
Sure. So when we work with some, first off, I know you mentioned you had long-term disability benefits. A
Hmm.
lot of people who have long-term disability benefits, that insurance carrier that's paying you the long-term disability benefits is going to refer you out to a vendor of some sort, whether it's a non-attorney or an attorney, to help you through this process. And when they do that, they are really paying for the fee. So there's no cost to you. And that's because they're going to pay out less in long-term disability benefits once you're approved for Social Security. So it saves them money. So they're covering that cost. Now, 65% of the people in this country don't have long-term disability benefits. So the vast majority of people don't have any income. So what is the cost? So the cost for using any Social Security representative, and I can say that because Social Security mandates what's charged, like it has to be approved. We can't just charge you whatever we want. It's a set rate. It's 25% of past due benefits up to a maximum of $7,200. Okay. So it's based on what your retro is. So if your retroactive benefit is only $4,000, then our fee would be $1,000, and it's paid to us directly by Social Security. So it just comes out of the retro. So you would get paid $3,000 and we would get paid $1,000. So the maximum would be $7,200, and that's what is that, $28,800. If that was what your retro was, then the most you'll ever pay would be $7,200. And again, it comes directly to us from Social Security. It's not you writing a check. It just means you're getting less of your past due benefits, and some of it is going to that Social Security attorney or non-attorney that's working with you.
Also comes off of your child or spouse, the separate award that goes to them too, right? Okay. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about, so again, if anybody tells you as the client you have to pay money out of your pocket, turn around and walk out the door and go someplace else, because that's not accurate.
And the other thing I would say about that, if you are hiring your own, make sure all they do is Social Security law. There are a lot of general practitioners out there that say, sure, I'll do it. This is not this is a niche market. This is where you want people, it's all they do. It's very, very specific. You don't want to use your workers' comp attorney. You absolutely don't want to use your workers' comp attorney. No offense to them, but they don't understand Social Security, and we see mistakes made left and right. So just get somebody that's all they do. That's just their general practice. There's lots of folks out there that do it. I would say anyone who this is that their livelihood is, they're going to be good at it. And that's what you want to look for if you're going to hire somebody to help you.
And so that goes towards also, if you are not employed at the moment that this happened, somebody should just reach out to a law firm, whether it's you or somebody else. Okay. So getting back to what people are looking for on applications, this is another reason why you don't want to fill these things out on your own. Because if they ask you, do you sleep? Do you take a nap? The answer
what kind of
is
chores
yes.
do you do? What are you able to do chores? Do you take care of anybody?
Can you stoop down? How long can you stoop down? I'm like, I don't know. How fast do you need me to stand up? It's like these questions need to be quantifiable. You need to be able to say, I typically sleep X amount of hours a day equaling X amount of hours a week. I think one of the questions was, how's your mood? How do you get along with others? I'm like, this is just the most bizarre. They are the most random questions. So getting that assistance with, how you equate what you're feeling and your answer to how they really want to read it is extremely helpful. One of the things that also happened to me that I did not ask about was they wanted me to see a physician, their own psychologist. And I didn't know that I didn't necessarily need to go see somebody new who doesn't know the first thing about me. So I did the appointment, went into who was appointed, who had the personality of my table. And to my benefit, as I was sitting there still getting triggered by things, when an ambulance went by, I think I curled up on the floor. So was I mildly embarrassed? Sure. Did I pass? Absolutely, with flying colors, I suppose, in one way. But it was very tough. That I was not prepared for somebody to ask me questions and not really show a stitch of emotion, because that's their job, and just not care. Meanwhile, I'm used to my therapist who's, very empathetic, and kid gloves is working me through this, and who they appointed to me was horrible. When you compare, looking back, I know now it really wasn't horrible, but if you're ill prepared, it's just the worst. And from what I've heard, they can actually ask you to go see a different physician. I had a retired, which it might have been a dermatologist or a pediatrician, I can't remember, reviewing my case on long-term disability that I was fighting while I was involved with this, because they wanted to cut it off. And I remember writing in the back saying, how many aortic dissections have you seen in your career? Their answer was none. And then I'd say, well, then how do you know what I'm feeling and what I'm experiencing with blood pressure issues and everything else? So it was incredible and just irritating that a doctor that had no experience with what I was suffering from was there to make the decision about something so important to me. So speak to that just a little
Mhm.
bit so maybe everybody can understand what they should or should not do.
So, Social Security, if they don't feel they have enough medical from you, can ask you to go see a third party and set that appointment up for you. However, if you have enough medical under your own, that they should not need to do that. And that is something that we would be pushing back on Social Security, saying, you have plenty here. Why are you asking to go and try to get that canceled for you? For people who don't have much medical or only seen one type of doctor, then they can ask you to do that. The problem with these doctors, and I don't want to, say every one of them, but I am going to say many of them just it's not a very lucrative thing that they do, that Social Security pays them to do. You don't necessarily get the best of the best in terms of who's going to be looking at your cases. So when we're dealing with cases where someone's been sent to a third party, part of what we do when we go to a hearing before a judge is really look at the qualifications. And part of our job is to point out the medical qualifications, the pertinent medical evidence, and really if it's a bad review, so to speak, like they're not supporting the disability, really we're going to try and show how that's not fundamentally sound based on their credentials and also by what they actually put. So again, that's part of what we do. The expertise that you're getting by hiring a representative is doing that work for you. But if we're on the front end, we may be able to prevent you from having to go to a third party when they unnecessarily are asking for it.
Exactly. To that regard, when you go to the hearing, because we just talked a teeny bit about what you could write in the paperwork, and I'll tell you, the hearing, I was so scared. I was so nervous. I had just met my attorney face to face that day, which felt like doesn't seem right. And he was like, "It's going to be fine. It's all fine." And I am the kind of person that was taught that you should dress nicely, business casual
Mhm.
to a hearing. So that's how I am. And I'm looking around. That was not necessarily what I saw around me. No judgment, but it was very different. I went in, there's the scary judge up on the
Mhm.
bench, and I'm down below as it's already, I don't even like to go to court. And the vocational expert is on the phone telling my attorney and telling the judge that I could have the following jobs. I
Mhm.
qualified based on my disability to be a customer service rep, and yet I didn't have at the time use of my arm. I could be a TSA agent at the gate and pat people down. I guess jump them if I thought something was wrong. And I forget, I think the other one was it's something to do. There's always that, oh, this person could be a Walmart greeter or count pencils or bag potato chips at Lay's or something
Mhm.
like that. And I just started to cry because my first thought was, oh my God, they're actually trying to find jobs that they think I can do. And I can't do anything. I can't even sit in here. I'm going to lose it right now. It was so stressful.
Mhm.
And, my attorney just said, well, let me ask you a question. How many of those jobs will allow my client to take 15% of her time off to go have tests, to go to therapies, and to have
Mhm.
doctor's appointments? Because first year, you're not
Mhm.
entitled to any of that because of FMLA. If they offer
Mhm.
that, you're going to lose your job. And then the second question was, how many jobs let her take a nap every day,
Mhm.
about 2 hour naps? And the guy was like, well, we don't take naps in this country in the middle of the day. And it was it was the first moment that I relaxed because I was like, yes, I hear what you're saying about these jobs, but my attorney, I was like, oh yeah, way
Mhm.
to go. And I had to be
Mhm.
so calm and cool,
Mhm.
collected. I was like, that was amazing. And to what's normal to him, and he's gonna walk out of here with me and make it to his, 2 o'clock court appearance of somebody else, was just such an emotional roller coaster of emotions. And people need to know that it's going to be overwhelming. You're going to feel intimidated. You're really just there just to show your face. And I was given a chance to say something. And
Mhm.
I did look right at the judge and I said, I don't want to be here. I've been working since I was 14 years old. At that point, it had been 30 years of my life. This is not what I thought I was going to be doing, but I don't know what else to do right now. I can't do this. And I'm coming to you asking you for help. This is before I heard your brilliant comment
Mhm.
about that this is the insurance policy that you're just cashing
Mhm.
in. As if you had a car accident, you got to let the insurance people know. And so I didn't know anything that minute. The
Mhm.
attorney said, I think it went really, really well. And it took a
Mhm.
while before I found out. And then it took even longer before I got the first check. But speak a little bit to more that goes on in that face to
Yeah.
face to help everybody kind of understand.
Yeah. So when you go to the hearing, it's the first time that you're actually going to be seen by Social Security and presenting a case. And in your case, it was face to face.
Yeah.
Social Security will still do face to face hearings if wanted, but the vast majority now are done either via telephone or via video. So I think
Okay.
that actually in some ways is a little bit of a relief for a lot of individuals. I mean, no individual wants to go to court and be judged, so to speak.
Right.
So what part of what our job is to explain to you everything that's going to happen. So your attorney is going to be talking with you before you go in about here's what's going to happen. I'm going to start talking about this. The judge is going to come back in this. There might be a vocational rehabilitation specialist there who's going to throw out theoreticals. Could they theoretically do this? And that's where I'm going to say, well, with this, could they do that? And basically poke holes in any thoughts that you could do a job based on the medical. So our job is to kind of relieve you of that fear as you go in, tell you what's going to happen, talk to you about what you're going to see, what's going to happen. And when you were talking about, you looked at the judge and you spoke, credibility is huge. Within a hearing, how credible the individual is plays a huge factor. So being authentic, having that medical there, having it supported, that's just going to help your case. But really what happens there is they're really supposed to go through the medical and they're supposed to look at, could you do any job? And that's why there's a vocational expert there often who's going to talk about what they think you can and can't do. And when they think there's something that you can do, your attorney's job is then to show and to ask questions that are very specific to what your limitations are to show that you actually don't have that ability. And then basically to get that vocational rehabilitation expert to be like, yeah, you're right. That isn't going to work. So that's really where our role comes from. They usually don't last too long, 30 minutes to maybe an hour at possibly most, usually pretty fast. And again, being by telephone or video now is, I think, a lot less stress inducing than having to travel, go before a judge. And for a lot of people, it's difficult. A lot of people with disabilities travel and getting to that courtroom was a lot more difficult than now being able to do it from your phone, home and on your phone. So I think that's a huge advancement and a real positive point that came out of COVID for disabled individuals, is that now it's a much more comfortable way for you to get to that hearing.
So the last two things I want to talk about before we see if we have any questions is, one, what if you're somebody who had your job and this is a daunting time frame? How are you going to pay for life? You're going to lose your apartment, your house, people become very, very concerned. And I listened to some stories. I'm like, I don't know how they're able to wait this out. What would be your recommendations? And is there a way to have something expedited?
The only way to get Social Security to work faster is if you have what's called dire need. And dire need means basically to show that you're about to be evicted, about to become homeless, things like that. It has to be pretty extreme. So unfortunately, there's really nothing great to do other than, file early, make sure you have somebody who's working hard and advocating for you to make sure everything's complete and getting pushed through that process. And then it would be in terms of looking around for what you have for local, community, and state resources for when you're low on income and resources.
Okay.
But yeah, it's really tough. And like I said, 65% of the people in this country don't have long-term disability.
Yeah,
long-term disability is a great benefit. A lot of people don't realize that, but having that, knowing that you're going to have some income, whether it's short-term and then also long-term, while waiting for that medical decision is absolutely huge. Because people can lose everything in the period of time it takes to get awarded Social Security benefits.
Yeah.
And again, that goes back to my file early.
Right. And there's companies like AFLAC. So if your employer doesn't offer long-term, you might want to look into that, especially if aortic disease runs in your family. Even if you haven't been diagnosed with anything, you might want to just make sure you have that extra policy that would cover the gap, at least for a time period while you're waiting. At least look into that.
Yeah, voluntary benefits are important.
Yes,
voluntary
exactly.
benefits, disability. I don't think people can underestimate the value of disability insurance. Absolutely. 1 in 4 people will become disabled. And when you said before it's probably best that you get insured before you get diagnosed, or maybe not insure that, or maybe much more expensive.
Exactly. So the final question would be, we've talked about this before, for people who haven't worked. And can they get disability? What do they do if, there's somebody because we do have people of younger age and they haven't really established themselves, and maybe they've just gone all the way through and just graduated college and they just don't have an income history. What can we do? And what is that called?
Sure. So there is another program for people who are not insured, and meaning insured means you didn't pay enough into Social Security to be eligible. But I do want to comment that younger people need less work to be insured. So a lot of kids that just went through college, if they worked summer jobs, are actually insured. You'd be surprised that it doesn't take that much. So don't assume you're not eligible just because you're younger. You want to find out. But if you're really not insured for Social Security, Social Security administers another program called Supplemental Security Income, referred to as SSI. It is not Social Security. but you will file for it with Social Security, and they make the same exact medical decision. So everything's exactly the same as in terms of the determination if you're disabled or not. The Social Security disability decision is the same as the SSI decision. The benefit amount, though, is much lower. There is a federal benefit amount that you could be eligible for, but then it's reduced for any other income that you have. Also, if you're not paying your fair share for your room and board, then it's going to be deducted a little bit, because the idea is you're getting that for free from somewhere, so they actually pay you a little bit less.
Right.
So it's not a lot, but it's something. And usually, if you get eligible for SSI, you'd be eligible for Medicaid, which is not Medicare. Medicare is, again, paid for through Social Security. Medicaid is more state medical insurance that you qualify for by having low income and low resources. But to be eligible for SSI, just even file for it, your income would have to be very, very low, but you also have to have less than $2,000 in resources. And that's in all bank accounts or anything that you could really sell for money.
Wow. Okay. All right. It's a lot of information, but again, it seems somehow I still learn something new every time I talk to you.
Although I feel like you're an expert now, Karen, and that you don't even need me to do this anymore.
I'm becoming one. Look, if I want to change careers, I'll give you guys a call. All right. Let's check in with Josh and see who we have paying attention tonight or has any questions, etc.
We've got a couple.
Okay.
Let me make sure that I'm not muted. Okay, good. So Molly says, I'm facing return to work in a few months. Can you please go through the timeline? For example, the first 9 months I can receive both Social Security and salary, and then on the 10th month, etc. What are the scenarios if I only last 8 months or 13 months up until the very last month?
Okay. So when I'm talking about those 9 months, and it means you're already awarded. So you're already on Social Security disability to be afforded those work incentives. So I'll speak to that first. So assuming you've been awarded Social Security disability, now you want to try going back to work, you can work for 9 months. And if you, no matter how much you earn, you still get your full Social Security check. The 10th month starts a 3-year period of time. And during those 3 years, any month you earn over $1,550 in gross wages, you're not due a check. Any month you earn under $1,550, you are due a check. So that will continue until the end of the 36th month. Then the first month you earn over $1,550, your claim would be terminated, your Social Security claim. And again, that's somebody who's already on. Now, if you're saying, I haven't filed yet and I want to return to work, well, then it's going to depend on, you have to have a 12-month period of time when either you were not working or you're earning less than that $1,550. So you could potentially be working at a low amount and still file for Social Security disability and still get a decision. But if you go back to work and are earning more than that inside of 12 months, the claim, there's really no claim there. Or if you'd already filed, it would be denied because you've shown that you can work and earn what Social Security calls substantial gainful activity. So you've proved to them you don't meet their definition of disability.
All right. So let me, because I think I know a little bit about this situation. So let's just say the person's been awarded and they decide to go back to work and they're earning $3,000 a month. I'm just making that up. 100%. I'm just making that up. Just going to put us over the 1,550 and they stop at the 8th month. There's no harm, no foul. Nothing changes. They don't touch the paperwork. Everything's the same. No review. Everything's fine. Let's say they're making same amount of money and it's month 13. So now from months 10, 11, 12, and 13, they've only gotten their paycheck because it's more, let's say, than their Social Security. But in month 13, they're like, you know what? I just can't. I've talked to my doctor. This isn't working for me. And they stop the job. Month 14, they automatically get that because it's in the first of those 3 years. They automatically just get their check. They don't have to fill out anything. They don't have to tell anybody not working anymore.
Well,
the check just starts.
Well, they do need to let Social Security know their wages. So Social Security, it needs to know the wages because once that 9th month is up, they're going to need to know whether you're due a check or you're not due a check for 13.
How does one go about doing that?
So you can, Social Security actually has a way online now where you can submit your pay stubs,
Oh,
or you
okay.
could go into the office and you can get a receipt, but they're
Mhm.
actually working right now, and hopefully soon, they're going to be able to get a feed, Social Security, directly from employers through the IRS. And so they'll
Okay.
know about the wages. It hasn't happened yet, but I've just been reading. I'm kind of excited about it because a lot of overpayments are caused by people not
Right.
submitting their wages timely and then getting overpaid. But there is a way to do it online, and hopefully down the road there'll actually be a much more efficient way to do it where you won't have to do anything. It will just come over automatically through a feed.
So month 10 is going to happen, and you're going to be like, oh, but I earned. Well,
Yep.
first of all, during the 9 months, you have to tell them you're earning money, but they don't really care because it's
They
9 months.
right.
And then because you're over the 1550, month
Yep.
10, you're going to tell them, oh, I made more money. And they're going to say, okay, well, we don't give you a check. Month 13, you're like, I'm not going to work anymore. So I'm now going to earn 0. Month 14, you're going to get your check.
Yes.
Okay.
And checks are going to continue indefinitely. And if you never
Indefinitely
work
with no
again,
issue, no
you
penalty.
never work again, you'll never
Right.
go off. No problem.
Okay. And if you make less than 1550, you just keep telling them that you're earning money and it's less than 1550 and you don't have to worry. So
Exactly.
anytime you earn income, let's say somebody earns $500 because, I don't know, they decided to be an election judge or something like that. I don't know. You have to go online and say, hey, this month, for the first time in 20 years, I earned $500.
Well, if it's under the SGA, it wouldn't affect anything. So if you're
Okay.
under that 1,550,
You don't even tell anybody.
you technically don't need to worry
Okay.
about them knowing about it. And even during those first
Perfect.
9 months, it's you as long as you have an awareness of it, know what's happening.
Okay.
But it's a good idea though, if it's like a steady employment and you're doing it, I would
Right.
get Social Security to know about it so
Sure.
things happen timely, depending upon what happens when you finish that 9th month.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Thank you. All right, Josh.
Right on, right on. She's got a couple follow-up questions.
Sure.
Is the income limit of 1550 gross or take home?
Gross wages.
Okay. Is my disability payment the same amount as what I will receive when I'm retirement age?
Yeah, interestingly, it is. So if you file for Social Security disability, the benefit amount you'd get would be as if you were at full retirement age at that point in time. So it is your maximum amount. So if you start getting disability at the age of 50 and you just stay on it forever, when you hit full retirement age, nothing changes. The benefit just continues as normal, but technically you're now on retirement. And the only reason they technically change it is so that they can report to Congress how much money is coming out of the disability trust fund versus the retirement trust fund. But as far as you're concerned, nothing changed.
And you can work as much as you want, not have to tell anybody once you're
Yeah.
at retirement age.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so that's another benefit right there. Okay.
Very interesting. Okay, Mammy P has joined the chat. And this question is, please explain units of work in order to have adequate work history to receive SSD if qualify.
Okay. So that depends. There's 2 types of insured status you need to have. One is based on age, depends on how old you are. And so most people need to have what's called, it really depends on how old you are and how much work you need to have. Kind of the more important one is called disability insured status, which means you have to have work in the recent past. And the idea is that Social Security is replacing income that you've lost because you can't work. If you haven't worked in 10 years, then there's no, Social Security is saying, well, you figured it out. There's no money to replace. So disability insured, conceptually, the way to think about it is you've worked at least 5 years in the 10 years prior to becoming disabled. So if you were disabled in 2020, between 2010 and 2020, did you work at least 5 years? Now, what does 5 years mean? What it means is, if you break it down into specifics, is you earn quarters of coverage based on how much you're earning. The most you can get in a year is 4. And it's not a lot of income. I should look it up right now to tell you what the cost. I believe the cost for a quarter this year is around $1,700 a quarter. So if we took $1,700 times 4, a full year of work would be whatever that is, 7,080. That's considered a full year of work. So it's not a lot of work. It doesn't have to be a significant amount of work, but you need to have work in those years in the past to have those quarters of coverage. It really, I would need to know your age and date of birth to tell you exactly how many you'd have to have looking at that work history. But the key one, I think, for most people with disability is, do you have that disability insured status? Have you worked at least 5 years in the 10 years prior to becoming disabled?
Good question.
Okay. And I don't think anything has drifted into the anonymous question area.
Okay. All right. But they were really good questions.
Yes.
I know everybody wants to know. You know what? And let me ask you, if someone was thinking about disability, is there a place they can go to see what they would possibly receive, what their benefit allotted amount is?
Yes, excellent question. Social Security, right on their website, ssa.gov, has something called My Account, and you
Hmm.
can set up your own My Account. You would log in as yourself. The first time you log in, you have to prove it's you. So you actually have to answer some questions that they're going to pull from your credit reports, like Experian. Like they might say, "Who do you have a mortgage with?" Or, you have a car loan of such and such amount. You want to answer those correctly, because if you answer them wrong, you're going to have to go to Social Security to get it straightened out. But if you answer everything correctly, you'll create a username and password, and then you're able to go in and look at your earnings record. You can see exactly what Social Security has that you earned in every single year, and it's going to give you an estimate of what your disability benefit amount would be, what your
Hmm.
retirement benefit amount is going to be. I think it's a great idea for people to go in and look at this, because it's an opportunity for you to look at that earnings record and make sure nothing's missing.
Right.
There shouldn't be, but sometimes there is. And if you can have the W-2 from whatever year was missing, you can go to Social Security and get your earnings record corrected.
That's a really good point. I never even thought to do that,
Hmm.
but I'm so into this process. I don't even have the energy to go do that. All right. Well, I think this is all incredible information, and for anybody, regardless of what your medical situation might be, it's just, when you guys explain it time after time, it just makes it seem so less daunting, which is just the most appropriate word to explain this process, because there's so much paper
Hmm.
involved. And, you know, coming out of something like this, or just even knowing that you can't work, I think there's just such a stigma, especially for certain generations and certain age brackets, that not working is frowned upon and it's a loss of identity. And it takes a while before you realize that was never your identity to begin with. There's
Hmm.
other things that are really more important, but you feel like it's a loss of identity, and you feel like, oh my God, I'm going to have to file. I'm now disabled, first of all, and now I
Hmm.
have to file for disability. But really, I try to help guide people to think it's not really disabled, you're less abled, and you're just collecting on an insurance policy that you paid into. You paid into
Hmm.
it. It's yours. You're entitled to this
Yeah.
benefit, and you're just knocking on the door. And who knows, will you be in a year or two or three? And
Hmm.
I've always loved the idea of trying to go back to work. And I love how well that you explain that
Hmm.
it's not frowned upon. It's actually upside down frown. So it's happy. It's good. It's looked
Yes,
upon
it's absolutely
favorably.
encouraged.
And it's really not scary. Go for the nine
Hmm.
months, see what happens. You don't even have to really talk about it if you're under the threshold. And if you're more than that, that's okay, because you've still got 3 more years. And if
Yep.
you end up saying, I know I can't do that. I tried, I had a really good run. It lasted 2.5 years plus the 9 months,
Hmm.
in addition, I think I'm done now, then you're just done,
Yep.
you know? I
Yep.
mean,
And you gave it
if
a
you
try.
Right, exactly. You gave it a
Yeah.
try, and if you end up ending at the 11th month of those three,
Hmm.
then so be it. Um, hopefully you put a lot in savings, I guess.
Yeah.
But you do
And so,
you,
I mean, and
yeah,
really, again, what we're here to do is to help you to answer any of your questions.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
I know hopefully my contact information will be available to you. Please
yes,
don't hesitate to reach out. I'm
yeah.
more than happy to answer any questions. Don't feel that it's a need to use us. I just want to be a resource to you as you go through this. So, again, I'm open to any questions anytime to help guide you through this. And if you do to try to get help from somebody, I mean, the goal of, I hope that anyone that's in the field that I'm in, is our job is to take all this work out of the process for you, let you
Mhm.
focus on your health, let us deal with filing for Social Security and getting you awarded, so that you don't have to deal with that, and you could just focus on what's more important, which is getting better and feeling as best as you can.
And I know that I am hearing from people that I've referred over to you that you guys really are pretty well versed in aortic disease. You
Mhm.
understand aneurysms, you understand dissections, and just statistically how it's almost near impossible that we're here, but we are, and the PTSD. And people should not negate the emotional and mental health as being as equally important in this process as physical health. So that does it can play a significant role
Mhm.
in being awarded your disability as well. So, Barbara, as always, this was wonderful. Yes. Oh
No.
my goodness. Okay. Sure.
Okay,
Good
good
question.
question. So if the first month you earn over SGA, after that 36th month, you will be terminated. If you become disabled, again, alleging the same disability, you can file, and you do need to get a new medical decision, but you qualify for what's called expedited reinstatement of benefits, meaning they'll start paying you while making the new decision. You can get 6 months worth of checks while waiting for the new decision. And if the new decision comes back denying you, you don't have to pay that money back.
Wow.
So you actually can get 6 months worth of checks, and then hopefully you'll get approved. So as long as you file within, my gosh, I can't remember now if it's 5 years or 10 years. I'm pretty sure it's 5 years. As you come back in within 5 years with alleging the same diagnosis, you can automatically start getting checks while they make a new decision, but they do need to make a new decision.
See, and all of these answers just leads me to the same reasoning of, if you really feel like you can and you've worked this through with your physician, it does not seem so scary to try. I mean, I had no clue. I never even gave that thought, honestly, what it would be like to go back. And if things were going really well, what would happen if in like 4.5 years, all of a sudden I have a massive complication and, something goes awry, or that's when I need to have my valve replaced and everything goes screwy from it. And I have to become disabled again. I think I just naturally assumed I'd be on another 2.5, 3-year waiting list. And you're saying, no, I immediately pick up where I left off. And I might even have a different benefit amount. Depends on how much money I made over the last 4 years, right? So I start getting checks. And what if they don't have your decision in 6 months?
Then the benefits would stop, but while waiting for that new decision to come in.
Okay. But it sounds like it's more of an expedited decision.
Yes,
you've already been there, done that.
Exactly.
Right,
that they have the medical behind you, that you already met it. And
Right.
so they would look at that. But
Okay.
but hopefully you'd have a decision within those 6 months.
Yeah, that's amazing. Josh, that looks like it's a wrap. Okay. All right. Yeah, Barbara from Doherty, Cella, Keane and Associates. You would have thought I was from Boston saying Doherty. No, it's Doherty.
And Cella is Italian, so it's Cella. So you want to say Cella, Doherty,
Right.
Cella, but it's actually pronounced Cella.
It's the H. Get rid of the H and put the R before the E or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Doherty, Cella, Keane and Associates are just one law firm that I know I've used personally. I think you should have a conversation with them. But whatever you decide, really consider using a law firm. I promise you, this process will not only have a better chance of being expedited, but will be 1,000,000 times easier for you, and probably a lot more accurate without any errors, and you won't have to redo anything, and you have a better chance of approval moving forward. So thank you again, Barbara, as always. It was wonderful, and hopefully we'll have Chris join you next time towards the latter half of the year.
Great. All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you. Don't forget to click like and click subscribe, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.